Hello, welcome to a live inspirational community collaboration showtime. This is Tech Tuesday. My name's Mark Abadi. It is a pleasure to host the wisdom keepers and the thought leaders of today's world, to bring them to you and share the light. Today we have most wonderful guests, Dr. Manjir Samanta-Laughton, a wonderful friend of mine who's a medical doctor who then became a quantum physicist, black hole specialist, channeling angelic creature of other realms. She blends science with spirituality in the true sense of the spiritual with the science, and it's wonderful to have her here. Welcome, Samantha. Manjir, sorry. How are you?
After that big build-up.
After the big build-up. Get your name on. Part of your name.
Hi, yeah, good to see you. Been a long time, Mark. So,
yes. So, where are you first off?
I'm in Milton Keynes in the UK.
Okay. Tell me
which is a bit north of London.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself. Like, I mean, I gave you a little intro. Give us some more.
Well, in career-wise, I went to, school like everybody else. And then I went to medical school. And as whilst I was in medical school, that I had a massive spiritual awakening in the first few weeks. Some would say it is a Kundalini awakening, if you've heard of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have. Maybe you want to explain that to people who might not have heard of it.
So a Kundalini awakening is it's a Sanskrit name for a sort of potential energy that's supposed to be coiled up in your sacrum bone, in your bottom of your spine. And then when something happens, either meditation or something like that, it can actually rise up through your chakras and out of the top of your head. And it's a kind of big, your thing at the moment is unity, isn't it? So it's a unity experience where the inner individual self becomes at one with the whole. And you can imagine that was quite an interesting thing to happen first few weeks of medical school.
Some would say very lucky timing before you kind of get, washed into the system of allopathic medicine.
Yes, exactly. And it was interesting going through these two strands side by side. And so I was complete skeptic before that. I didn't believe in anything psychic or spiritual. I thought it was all superstition, complementary medicine, everything. I thought it was all nonsense. So it was a overnight change in my outlook, which is completely radical.
Yeah. Okay, and then you had a Kundalini awakening, but what does that mean? Like, okay, so you became aware of energy coming up your body.
Yeah, I became really aware of energy. I started getting energy coming out of my hands, and I was like, okay, what do I do with all of this? And so I actually started training. Well, I trained to be a GP, medical general practitioner.
Right.
And I also, I don't know what you call it in the States now. Is it just like family practitioner or something?
Yeah, family doctor.
Family doctor, yeah. So I trained to do that. And at the same time, I trained in bioenergy therapies as well. And that really sort of accelerated my life. And so I had massive changes in my personal life as well. And it all led me to a place where I started following my real passion, which is connecting science and spirituality, which I'd been sort of secretly doing, and I did the odd talk here and there. But really, I've been doing it ever since about 2002 onwards, and so. And then, what I wasn't expecting is to get this theory of black holes through, which was the big surprise. But, I just thought, like yourself, you're someone who is really interested in the science of energy medicine. And that's the sort of thing I was into, and reading the books of James Oshman and people like that. So
we had Jim on the show last week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Just
wow,
Beverly Rubik.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Actually, last
Wow.
Tuesday on Tech Tuesday.
Oh wow, I'm getting honoured footsteps. So yeah, I was kind of into that, and what I wasn't expecting is to go into this whole arena of cosmology and astrophysics. So people, just even the other day on a Zoom call, we weren't meeting in person, but somebody actually mistook me for a physicist, and it's like, no, I haven't even got an A level. So it's
Tell us about what happened. What did you start to channel or become aware of?
Well, I was kind of secretly into cosmology and things all along, and I knew that there was something that I wasn't quite. Um, it was like being on the tip of my tongue. There was something almost like trying to remember something, and so I was reading all this stuff in the late 90s. It was like just in New Scientists and things. I mean, I can't read a technical physics journal. I wouldn't be able to understand it. I'm not a physicist. So I was reading the sort of changes that were happening in the popular science journals. Things like, you probably know about this, they realized that the universe was actually speeding away, like accelerating away. Yes. And all of these sorts of changes were happening, and people were talking about a standard model of cosmology, that we figured it out. We figured out that there's this missing thing called dark energy that was mysteriously there all along. So I was kind of like looking at all of these things, and I got interested in looking at things like quasars and the way that they behave. And quasars are supposed to have like a black hole associated with them. And black holes often are talked about in physics as the thing that nothing can escape from, not even light. Right. And so, everything's supposed to be sucked down a black hole. But in the journals, people were talking about how they were observing fast-moving electrons coming out of these black holes in the vicinity of these quasars, and gamma rays, and which is really the furthest end of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can detect. Right. So
gamma rays are light, right?
Yes,
it's a form. Electromagnetic spectrum is light.
Exactly, it's a form of light. Yeah. So very, very interesting, and it was actually saying that it seems to be the result of like electrons have like a mirror particle called positrons, and they're the same except the opposite, like the opposite spin and opposite mass and everything. And so it seemed to be that these in these black holes, in these great annihilators, if you want to have a look at the New Scientist article, that the electrons and the positrons were coming together to form these gamma rays. And so I was sort of pondering on all of this, going, well, how is this possible? How are black holes actually not sucking all this up? And I was walking out in the woods when I had this massive download and massive, I wouldn't exactly call it a vision, but it's just suddenly I knew what was happening. And I realized that black holes are not destructive, they're actually creative. And I saw that what happens is that most of our universe is not something that's visible to us. It's beyond what we call the speed of light. And everyone thinks, well, nothing is beyond the speed of light. But actually, Einstein, who came up with this idea that nothing can go faster than the speed of light, he said nothing with mass can go faster than the speed of light. So I realized that there was a whole realms beyond that light can go and everything like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Light have no mass.
Because light has no mass, exactly.
So nothing can travel faster than the speed of light except light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the point?
Exactly. Exactly. But because we don't kind of we see, because from our 3D perspective, reality is just everything with mass. So right. When we go nothing can travel, we actually mean nothing with mass, but that's all that we sort of count in our world anyway. So I realized that what's really happening is you've got this process going on, which I call the black hole principle, which is you still have the infinity at the center of the black hole, the singularity. That's infinite light. And that light spirals through the dimensions. Now, spiral is very important in nature. The Fibonacci spiral. Everything is created like that. It spirals through the dimensions, and it, yes, of course, and it gets to the edge of our reality, at the edge of that speed of light, which I've renamed the perception horizon, not the event horizon, the perception horizon, because that's the edge of our normal perception.
Right.
And when it gets there, the photons of light actually split into the matter and the antimatter, and those come out. So we see electrons coming out of these black holes at about 99% the speed of light.
So electrons are emitting out the hole, and did you say that neutrons also?
It depends on what level that you're looking at, but in stars you can see neutrons as well.
And they're different from neutrinos.
Neutrinos, sorry, neutrinos, not neutrons.
Okay, so it's electrons and neutrinos.
Yeah, neutrinos. But let's leave that out for now. Okay. Let's just talk about electrons and positrons. And so what we see is these streams of electrons coming out of black holes that almost, even the famous black hole that was imaged, I won't say photographed, but imaged last year, I said to everybody, just you watch, a few minutes, we won't have to wait very long, and that will start streaming out particles. Because that's what black holes do, and they'll be almost at the speed of light. And that's exactly what hit the headlines.
But they'll be less than the speed of light.
It's what we actually see is electrons coming out faster than the speed of light, but they've kind of done a bit of a fudge factor and gone, well, it's just kind of like an optical illusion. We're seeing it straight on. And so they say like 98% the speed of light. Okay. So basically, these are just slowing down to our dimension, and as they get to our dimension, the light splits and it becomes matter and antimatter. And so that's what we see in our telescopes coming out of black holes, and that we can see it. There's so much evidence of this now. I could go on citing all this.
Are neutrinos antimatter?
Well, you can get like antineutrinos. Like neutrino, but we'll leave that out for now because it's complicating things.
I like
neutrinos. Yeah, it is complicating things, but we'll stick to this.
You're saying that electrons can travel faster than the speed of light, and that's potentially what they're coming out of the black hole as, right?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying when we started to actually get these measurements, the measurements seem to show the electrons going faster than the speed of light. Right. What they've done now is adjusted those measurements to say it's a bit of an optical illusion, and they're actually going just below the speed of light. Right. So that's not something that I'm saying. So basically I'm saying they've just slowed down to our dimension, and that kind of happens. Now, it doesn't just stay there, it goes the other way. So the matter and the antimatter, let's just keep it simple as the positron electron, and the mirror images of each other, let's say, they combine again and they form light, usually in the form of a gamma ray burst. Like a gamma ray, like we talked about earlier. So you have this sort of breathing pattern. So sometimes you see electrons coming out of black holes, and sometimes you see gamma rays. And it's kind of like breathing, like the breath of the Tao, where you say that nothing is certain in the universe apart from change. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing that is a set point. It's not that electrons and positrons are better or gamma rays are better. It's the change itself, which is the only certainty.
Just like
so all these
music, the pulse between the notes is what gives the music.
Exactly. It's all the mystics have been talking about for many years. So it doesn't just end there, though, because after having this insight in the woods, I had this strong sense I had to go to sleep. So I had to go home and just fall asleep. And when I woke up, I was dreaming of the same process happening inside atoms, and that the normal atomic structure where you've got electrons jumping up the different shells, and as they jump up, they leave the positrons there. I realized that that's really the same process, but we're just seeing it at a different level. And as soon as I had that bit,
would that mean they're emitting gamma rays as well?
Well, if you look at what we look at in radioactivity, you get that happening, and if you look at what we use in our like neon lights and things like that, we use that effect of electrons going up and down the shells to emit light. So that's how we fuel our neon lights and things like that. So you're seeing the same process. As soon as I had those two things, I realized that this was a unifying process that happens at every level of the universe. And once I had that pattern, a lot of the strange processes in the universe start to make sense. So why do we have antimatter coming out of thunderstorms, for example, in our own planet? Well, thunderstorms are mini black holes. They emit gamma rays, they emit electrons at almost the speed of light. We call that lightning. They emit, antimatter that NASA just found that out in 2010. And we see all these sort of processes happening all across the universe, from stars to planets. A lot of the moons that we thought were completely dead and nothing happens on the moons of the solar system, we now see that they've got eruptions and light going on and all sorts of things. Our own moon has got lots of lights happening. So it starts to explain a lot of the problems that astrophysicists have right now. Once you understand the simple pattern, you can start to make predictions about the universe. So does that make sense?
Well, yes, it does. I mean, I have so many questions. How does this relate to Nassim Haramehn's notion? His
I'm not super familiar with his work. I did meet, bless her, Elizabeth Rocher, thanks to you. And so we did have a chat. And she started working on these ideas back in the 60s, as you probably know, when the term black hole was just coined. And so she came out with this idea of scaling black holes. We did have a chat. And in terms of the astrophysics, she was not familiar with the terms terrestrial gamma ray flashes and things like that. So she hadn't sort of looked into the astrophysics of going all the way down. Probably what she's done is worked out a more mathematical model. I'm not a physicist, I can't work it out. I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at what you see from telescopes. And by knowing this pattern, you can make a lot of predictions.
So what's the implications of this?
Well,
so let's say in the atoms there are these mini black holes, and they, when electrons move in and out of them, they combine with neutrinos or different things.
They combine with the positrons,
or the positrons to create electromagnetic waves of some description, light.
Yeah, they can make.
The kind of so what question?
Well, we're using this already. So we use this in nuclear power, we're using these effects already, not calling it the black hole principle. If you look back at the whole idea of the quantum vacuum, that you've got light cycling with matter and antimatter happening everywhere, well, it's the same process, but we're not calling it that. That's come out of quantum theory. So it's got a number of different applications. So if you accept that this is going on at every single level, the other factor that I talked about earlier was that thunderstorms are mini black holes. And so one of those things that come out of thunderstorms, as we all know, we found the antimatter, we found the matter called lightning, and we found the gamma ray bursts. They're called terrestrial gamma ray flashes when it comes to thunderstorms. The other thing is water. And it didn't take long for me to find some references to massive amount of water coming out of black holes themselves out in space. And if you understand that this black hole principle process produces water, then you know that you're going to find water all around space. So jets of water.
How is it producing water?
How is it producing water?
Yeah, like from where? Is it like a tunnel where there's a whole load of water on the other side and it just kind of squirts it out? I mean,
that's a really interesting question, and I don't know the full answer to it. But we're seeing huge amounts of water. The largest body of water has been found in deep space, and it's coming out of black holes. Really, really amazing. Now, how H2O comes out of black holes is a question that I think we need to look more into to answer. And so we need to know, why is it coming out as water? Is it forming after it comes out of black holes? Don't know those answers yet. It's very interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's exciting. So the general knowledge, the general thought at the moment is that, I mean, what's the general scientific belief of where the water on the Earth came from?
Well, a lot of people, of course, think that it came from an asteroid or a comet a long time ago, smashed into the Earth, and that's where the water came from originally, and it's been cycling ever since. However, it is a big mystery as to why that really happened and how we've got so much water. So, although that's what they'll tell.
Such a big comet to have all that water, and then wouldn't a comet that size have destroyed the Earth itself? I mean, it doesn't really make sense, the whole comet water thing.
Exactly. So, I mean, but this is, if a child was to ask their teacher in school, that's probably what they would get told.
So, what's your suggestion?
Well, I stood up in 2013 in the Noetic Sciences keynote conference, I was doing a keynote there, and said water actually comes from the center of the Earth. It's produced by the central, I know it sounds strange, but the Earth also is it's got a central black hole. And all these little vortices.
There's a black hole in the atoms and in the galaxy. It makes sense that everywhere in between is the same mathematical principle.
Exactly. Think of them, if you call them black hole dynamos, right? So that's what's producing the Van Allen belts. That's why they breathe, because, as I said, it fluctuates. So we're looking for a fluctuating field. What do we see? The other distinguishing mark of the black hole principle is a bipolar jet. So you see two jets of particles coming out perpendicular to the actual, what we used to call the accretion disk, like everything going down the plug hole. Now we know it's the creation disk, so everything's been created. So you see these bipolar jets, and often you see the spiral happening as well. So basically, what do we call the aurora borealis and the aurora australis? That's a bipolar jet happening in our Earth. So, we can start, and it's periodic, just as we'd expect with the black hole principle. So basically, you have this black hole at the center of the Earth. Within 7 months, scientists announced that they found the biggest ocean ever deep to the Earth. And it's sort of tied up in crystals and things like that. But they started to realize that this is probably the water of the Earth, the oceans of the Earth actually come from deep within the Earth rather than landed here and been cycling ever since. Wow. Could be a combination.
So it's like the Earth itself is a spring, a galactic spring.
Yeah. And so is Enceladus, the moon, and so is Enceladus, which is one of the moons of the solar system. So all these springs that you're seeing all over the solar system, it's the same principle.
And what do you think, why haven't all the other planets got water then, if it's the same principle? Surely at the center of all the other planets, like Mars, is Mars got a black hole at the center?
Yes, and we're seeing water on Mars. So water on Mars, it replenishes itself. Why is it replenishing itself? Because it's being produced by the interior of Mars.
So you're saying that Mars maybe underwent some sort of catastrophe, lost all its surface water, and now the center is kind of regenerating?
Every single level of this principle can be different. We even see water bullets coming out of stars. We even see water coming out of sunspots. So this sounds crazy.
We see water coming from sunspots?
Yes.
And our own sun?
Our own sun. Water's been detected coming from sunspots. So it's at every single level. It expresses itself differently. We even see water coming out of our moon. So
is water going to be coming out of the atoms then?
Well, this is interesting because at the different levels, we have to look at how it's expressed at the different levels. And I wondered that if some of the metabolic water of our bodies, for example, is through this process, but we have to see. I mean, it could be, it could be minuscule, but there's lots more questions that it opens up as well. And I'm fine with that. That's what science is all about, you know.
How are you finding the scientific community is meeting your theories?
Well, at the moment, what I did when I first set out to talk about this is I really went to the interface of science and spirituality. And I went into that world, as you know, and I really feel that I got the message over to many, many people, and I'm happy with that. And now it seems that I've been given a lot more information. We're in more of a telescope age. And as someone who's an outsider to the science community, of course, it's, you know, difficult to get people to recognize what I'm saying. But I think as we're entering the telescope age, we're finding more and more weird stuff all the time in the solar system, in exoplanets and things like that. And the more bitty their explanations are getting as to why you see something on this planet and then on this planet and then on this planet, and what, you know, these tidal waves are happening and this is happening. Why, I mean, I haven't even got into the whole thing of fossil fuels, but I mean, why, you know, why organic chemicals are seeing all over the universe, for example. And the more bitty it gets, the more that we need to have something like a unified theory. So I haven't approached the mainstream that much, but I'm getting, you know, ready to do that. And if anybody is watching this, then that'll be fab. But yeah, so it's interesting that I think it's challenging because people don't like someone from the outside maybe saying certain things to them. They are the professors and everything. But I mean, things like I'm fortunate enough to live near to the Open University, which has got a big space center. And I went to a lecture recently and they were talking about the asteroid Bennu. And they had been doing investigations on this asteroid, and they were sat there flummoxed because they were saying, and it did something we weren't expecting. It started ejecting material. And they were sitting there going, we have no idea why it's ejecting material. And they were doing the mathematics, trying to figure out what this could be. And it's this powerful ejection coming from an asteroid. And I was sat there going, yeah, I know why it's ejecting material, because it's the same sort of process. Yeah. It's the same process at every single level. So it will have periodic ejections, just like a thunderstorm, just like, you know, as black hole at the center of a galaxy, and all the way through the different levels.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, we were talking about faster than the speed of light. How does this principle connect the notion of entanglement? Does this give a kind of backdoor way to entanglement? For those of you who don't know, entanglement's where you basically split atoms that were connected, and they're spinning at opposite ways, and you take them 10 miles apart and you do something to one and the other changes instantly, and they calculate the speed, and it's at 26,000 times the speed of light. Nobody understands how this happens, but it's a factor of quantum physics, entanglement, that is repeatable over and over again. Nobody seems to understand how it works. Manjir, what is this? Does this give us some?
Yes, absolutely, because the area above the perception horizon at the speed of light is where we go beyond space and time. And it's at that central singularity, the infinity at the center of the black hole, where all the light comes from. And when we're talking at this level, our language is not enough to explain these levels. So this is very crude language. So basically it's at that unity point where the singularity, or the infinity at the center of every single black hole at every single level, is the same. So that's where the unity is. It's the infinity at the center of everything, and that creates everything at every single level. So there is nowhere to go in a deep level. That's why we see these entanglements, because everything is unified at a very deep level. It's just below the speed of light that we need to look at, you know, space and time, and we have that sort of experience. So yeah, it does. It just nicely explains a few things in quantum physics as well.
What about the spirals? We talked about spirals. are you noticing that the patterns from that you're seeing in the stars and the galaxies are similar to the biological patterns? And is the mathematical movement of these spirals the thing that creates the spirals of DNA and of the galaxy and stuff?
That's really well put, because it's a thing that creates the movement that yes, it's the thing beyond, and we call it a thing, but it's not.
Right.
It's not really a thing. So yeah, absolutely. You even see that in volcanoes. So you asked me, what about a really good application? Volcanoes also. If you look at volcanoes, you see lightning coming from volcanoes, and the plumes are going in a spiral pattern. So you see this sort of geometry even happening in volcanoes. And the lightning, well, people think, oh, well, the lightning is coming from the sky down to the volcano. Look at that footage properly, and you'll see it's coming from the volcano itself. So one of the applications is there a way we could use this theory to predict when volcanic eruptions happen? So can we, for example, I haven't got the funds, so I have not done this, but what we would look at, for example, is taking a team of scientists and measuring the gamma ray fluctuations from a volcano and seeing if they correlate to eruptions. Now, if we can do that, think of how many people's lives and suffering could be affected way into the future. I'm thinking in terms now of 1,000-year patterns. This hopefully is something that is going to last and help humanity way into the future. So climate change, the other thing that we can see that was found just 2 years ago is that we can see gamma ray bursts happening in hurricanes. So another...
It's all gamma rays. We need the Hulk. We need David Banner. It is for me, it's quite interesting that pretty much most of the action hero storylines are based around gamma rays. The whole Avengers thing, click of the thing, that whole glove is a gamma ray emitter. That's why at the end the Hulk had to do it, because he's built of gamma rays. And
I used to play that sort of stuff as a kid as well. It's really interesting how I used to play, shoot the gamma rays, and as a kid I used to play all these sci-fi games and things like that. And yeah, you're right. I think it's deep inside us. We know we're part of this big story and this big fractal.
So what is it about gamma rays that makes them special? And how hard is it to measure them?
It's not that the gamma rays are special, it's just that they're the farthest end of the electromagnetic frequency. Actually, there's a lot more than that that's happening. So this is also where the power of, because it's coming from infinity, yeah? The astrophysicists at the moment just don't understand how this energy is coming through space, fast radio bursts. They think that they're alien messages. I'm the one that's supposed to be woo-woo, yeah? I'm sitting here going, they're not alien messages. This is the power of the black hole principle, because it's got infinity behind it.
So are these 0-point field transducers?
Yeah, you could call it that, but it's like going beyond even the paradigm of the 0-point field, because the 0-point field, you can now fit that concept inside the black hole principle, because the 0-point field are a lot of black hole principle behavior. So it's bringing that information and that light through. And now we can see that, because when I think I was at a physics conference when somebody said that the original physicists who were doing the Copenhagen interpretation were actually, so I don't know if it's Heisenberg or not, but their original calculations were the 0-point field was actually a sea of black holes with infinities at the core. And they didn't believe that in work, so they changed it. So I've never seen that published.
There is this, your point is that there's a boundless energy sea that we can tap into if we start to understand the black hole principles and how to transduce to convert from one form to another, or how to is it a code? Is it like a doorway, like a combination lock?
I think some people are already doing this, and one of the things is we call it electricity. And if you look at Faraday's original ideas, why he was successful is he realized that electricity goes in is curved rather than goes in straight lines all the time. So everybody else was looking at that, and so the electromagnetic force. So we see it probably was, if we look at it, it's spiraling. So there's only one force actually, and that's the force that's uniting everything. And so all the particles are just looking at this one spiral of light from different angles, and that's why they've got all these weird kind of qualities to them. Like I'm not a particle physicist, so I won't go into all of this sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's huge potential. So we're already using, nuclear bombs and things like that. We're already using black hole because we can't do anything else. That's how we use energy in our world anyway, because it's such a fundamental principle. But now we can do this consciously. We can actually maybe find a new energy source like that. But we already are using the black hole principle. And some people there's a guy in Japan who apparently has created a device that's creating energy, and it's to do with water. And so people are doing these pockets, and maybe because we don't understand this Japanese guy, for example, because nobody understands how he's doing it, it's being dismissed. Right. But if we know the black hole principle, maybe it'd be more acceptable. So but I think the power of the theory really is to solve some of the problems in astrophysics, and I think once we realize that this is solving a lot of the problems, then we can realize that it is a unifying theory, and it could help us to understand climate change. It could help us to understand, so why are there more hurricanes happening? Why are there more volcanoes? So understanding, is there a pattern to it? Do we have bipolar jets going across the planet and creating volcanic eruptions, for example?
And if I'm right in understanding, it will help us also with medical issues, with people's health and dynamics, as above, so below. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of. I mean, I've been saying for a while that even our emotions, it's kind of like bringing that unity of that aha moment is bringing the positron and electron into light again, and that's something that John DeMartini has made popular. So, even in our personal lives, and also, looking at the energy field, is that our antimatter region, that sort of thing, by photon emissions, that we have pulsing light that, as you know, that has been detected coming off our bodies, and other creatures as well have these light fields. So there's a lot of possibilities, and this is, I said this is a unified pattern and we can understand things, but it also needs a lot more study in all of these areas. So I'm not sitting here saying that I know how all this is going to pan out, but it gives us new avenues.
Absolutely. How does this relate to Jerry Pollock's work with exclusion zone water, fourth phase of water, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually speak at his conference, and I think we'd have to do more work on it, because as I said, I don't know exactly why the water is actually coming from the black hole principle, but I think it's something to do with the polarities. So I think that's where we could do some more work on trying to understand why the exclusion zone happens. So I think, as my guess is, I'm not sure, because in different cultures, people talk about interdimensional water. If you pick up your Bible and everything, you will see the water comes first. And it makes me wonder if people are remembering some order of the universe where there's actually water. I mean, as you know, water is an incredible substance that we don't fully understand. And if there's something about water that's actually there's an interdimensional version of it, and that it actually comes through in some form of water through to our dimension. I know it sounds odd, but is there something that we're just seeing below the speed of light, version of it. I don't know.
Right.
So as the polarity split, water is created. That's my guess. I don't know for sure. So that would sort
And
of go with it. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I get excited. This is like my hottest subject. I love this. If there's stuff moving faster than the speed of light that's coming out, are we going to be able to detect that?
Well, that's the thing. Our detection, most of the time we don't detect the stuff. That hence we think most of the universe is missing dark energy and dark matter. It's 99% of the universe is totally undetectable to us. What I'm saying is that that's the stuff that's beyond the perception horizon. And that there's a reason why it shapes our world, because it's in this other realm. That's the realm that mystics have known all along.
Yeah. And is it that it's moving faster than the speed of light? Is dark matter moving faster than the speed of light? That's why.
But then you get into those words like, what is movement? Because movement kind of implies space and time. So when we get to these levels, we're talking about reality working in different ways.
Right.
And sometimes our minds can't understand that. So I simplified things by saying light is moving from higher dimensions slow, but moving then becomes a bit of a misnomer.
Yes. So and what I can't help but go to is this notion that keeps coming up, as above so below, and the dynamics of the sort of spiral universe and consciousness itself split into this duality of presence, the Ida, the Pingala, the yin, the yang, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. This kind of a dichotomy of creation whereby the real truths and the real kind of magic happen when you blend both the dichotomies together into the singularity and then kind of cease to be limited in the duality. Are you finding that the work that you're doing with the physics of the universe connects in with the ancient texts and talking about Kundalini and chakras and the spiraling duality of creation?
Well, absolutely. And so what are chakras, for example? I mean, we both know Professor Harry Elfield, and he was using his PIP equipment when he discovered these centers of the body. Didn't know what they were, and ironically, apparently it was a physicist who told him that these are these ancient concepts called chakras, which I see you've got a picture of them behind. So what are those if not spinning vortices of the body that's supposed to be creating the physical body? So that's the idea. So everything that I've just said, and what do we find when we measure across chakras? Like, I mean, who did all this work? But Professor Valerie Hunt at UCLA did a lot of work at chakras and discovered that there were sort of fields around chakras, and she was picking all that up. So they have been scientifically studied, even though it's probably one of the most ridiculed subjects. So we then go right back to my Kundalini experience, and when you see matter and antimatter coming out of black holes, they sometimes spiral in this sort of almost like a DNA spiral. And you were talking earlier about the pattern where you do see that the same mathematics that happens all over the universe, from oceans to black holes. So again, you get this Kundalini double spiral that's coming out in the being. So it's almost like the Kundalini, I now call it almost like the coronal mass ejection of a person. Exactly. Of a person's being. It's just as the sun is giving off these massive, it goes to the next level, so are we in our own beings going to the next level by having these double spiral events. Right. And so it's and so it goes. We are absolutely part of the whole, and also our lives, as I said, that emotional experience, where we go from this polar, I hate that person, and they did that to me, and to the light where we go, if that hadn't happened, and then we go to get to stillness and peace in that situation, and then we go to the next polarity. So our lives are doing that as well. They're going from antimatter, matter, and back again, and back into light, and then again. And so we have this breath going through our lives as well. So
they call that the Maya, don't they? Great illusion.
Yes.
And I can't help but think about music at this point, and the mathematics that govern music and the harmonics. Same mathematical principles of the golden ratio. Pythagoras started the chords, the notes are based in the golden ratio. I recommend Donald in Math Magic Land for people who want to see a cartoon version of explanation of that. And of course the work of May Wan Ho. With her coherence and her quantum jazz stuff. How does this interrelate with that?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know enough about music theory. I wish I did, but absolutely, that's music is really the key to it all. And before an injection happens in a black hole, be it the sun, I mean, the sun is so loud. You get this crescendo. So sound comes first, and then the ejection happens. And there's many places around the world that have this like low-lying hum, and you can hear thunder coming from inside the planet. So it's even a bit of a nuisance to people that there's sort of, and these sort of cracks and hums and things happen all over the place. So yes, sound is absolutely key to all of this. And as we know, the thunder precedes, a lot of the, it associates with thunderstorms as well. So,
right.
Yeah.
So how can we practically, as humans, apply this? And I do want to ask you about. I do want to ask you about petrochemicals, fossil fuels in a minute, but just quickly, how can we apply this to our own sort of wellness?
Gosh, can you hear me okay? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great, brilliant. So how do we apply this to wellness? I mean, I think I do spell it out a lot more in my courses. So it's breaking it down into what it means for our reality as well. So what it means to have this positron antimatter region. So that means that you have this region of the world, of the universe, that is in negative space-time, that's complex unto ours. So that kind of means that the future's already happened. So what does that mean for the law of attraction and all of that sort of stuff that we all learn about? So it has a lot of, one of the biggest things is the living from c² is what I call it. So if the speed of light is associated with the matter region, the electron sort of region, and then we have this complex region, which is the antimatter region, and that's a region of c², the speed of light squared, then that's a region where sort of the future's already happened. So that's kind of a really, really interesting way to look at it, because it's the place where time doesn't exist is actually beyond both of them in that light region. So it's like these two things are pretending to be separate when they're actually always part of the unity and always part of the light. But as far as our human experiences go, we experience time going forward, but there's another timeline where time is going backwards effectively. So one of the most powerful things is realizing that, and that the choices that you're making are not from your ego self, but they're made from your outer space and time self. We've got many levels to who we are. And
outer space and time self. I like
that. So some people call it the higher self, but it's the outer space and time self that is making the choices. And so once you recognize that you are the one that is manifesting everything in your life, you've already manifested it. You've put it into your timelines from outer space and time, and you're doing it every moment, because time is all simultaneous. But from your human perspective, once you realize that, it's actually really liberating. You wouldn't think that it was, but to recognize that everything that's happening to you, you've chosen, like we're going through a time at the moment where we've chosen to be here at this time. And so you've got to ask yourself, why did you choose to be here at this time? You know, and once you start to realize that, instead of going, I want to use the law of attraction to just eliminate everything that I don't like in my life, start to accept it, go, well, what in my outer space time self-wisdom why did I choose these things? And why did I put them in my C and C squared timelines? So once you start to do that, that's an enormous shift in your life. And so it's another way to get to that point of acceptance and surrender that a lot of people talk about.
It kind of sounds like science of enlightenment.
It's another way of looking at, of explaining why these things work. Just another scientific framework, but I mean, it's not something that's new. Some people have been talking about surrender and acceptance for a long time, but to recognize why that is, because you've got this C and C squared, the matter and the antimatter region.
Oh, great. Okay. I do want to hear about your courses and how people can find out more, because I mean, that C and C squared, you know, I got a little bit, and it's probably because I've meditated for quite some years, and have had certain experiences that enable me to get the principles beyond the physics of it. The physics went a little bit like past me. So obviously you're going to be doing courses and holding spaces for people. We have, like, you know, 10 minutes ish. Michael's waiting patiently. It's nice. Tell us a little bit quickly about fossil fuels. I know you wanted to talk about that.
Oh gosh, right. So this is the hot stuff that has just really happened in the last, I realized in the last few year or so. And that is, I realized that all the long story, but I mean, basically the oil and coal that we think has come from trees and plankton and things like that down from the surface. There's a lot of evidence. A physicist called Thomas Gold wrote a lot about this, about how it makes more sense for it to be coming up from the interior of the earth upwards. For example, wherever you find oil, you find coal and methane as well. So these three things just go together all the time. So basically he makes it a big point of that. And it was when I was watching this thing about the Gulf of Mexico and the supposed asteroid crater, and there's a lot of oil in the Gulf of Mexico. And I thought, hang on a minute, how can there be material from the interior of the earth on the edges of this crater? What if that's a black hole ejection that happened way in the past, and this is a major black hole principle site? And I thought, if I'm right, then oil has to be present in the solar system. And so I went and
has to be present in the solar system.
Yeah.
Just like randomly around, and there's no dinosaurs and trees having gone
Exactly.
out into space and then died and
Exactly.
right?
Well, boy, was I amazed at what I found. So Titan, which is you know, one of the moons of the solar system and Saturn's moons, has got masses of oil, more oil than we have on the, yes, masses of oil.
What are you talking about? Titan has oil.
Titan has oil. They just found crude oil on Mars.
What?
Methane is given off on Mars, get this, in ejections. And they don't know why. Do you remember I said the black hole principle works in ejections? Right. So it's being given off in ejections. So you're seeing, and this is the crazy part, coal is coming out of stars. Coal is trees that have compressed over a million years, blah, 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 blah. Why are we seeing this come out? Hong Kong scientist has seen coal coming out of stars, doesn't know why.
This Thomas Gold?
No, he died a few years ago.
Put some references under this pitch, under the video.
Absolutely. If you go to punkscience.com / yeah, and then actually if you go to Dr. Manjir, all one word, DRMANJIR.com / fossil, it's got all the references in there. But yeah, it's just amazing. We're seeing oil and coal. Comets are covered in coal, basically. There's hydrocarbons everywhere. We've known that since the 1930s, that sort of time, but nobody's really explained why we're seeing these hydrocarbons everywhere. It's supposed to be to do with life. So they actually thought that the Mars rover was farting when they found all these methane emissions being given off.
Well, I mean, methane is one thing that you could, explain away, but seeing crude oil
Yeah.
and coal, which is supposed to come from matter. I mean, I suppose you could say that you could explain it on Mars because there used to be life and then it compressed down billions of years ago, blah, blah, blah. But to see it coming out of suns and to see it on Titan, where I mean, so holy moly, that is a blowaway. So it kind of makes me feel so much better. Like I had a sort of negative feeling about coal and oil. Now I kind of feel all holy about it. Like, oh, well, it's, comes from stars. It's kind of like cleaner.
And it also explains why oil fields replenish themselves, because they're supposed to, people who work in the industry know that if you go to an old oil field, it fills up again. So not all of them, but some of them do. So that's kind of interesting too. So I feel kind of good as well. It feels like, I've got a new respect for our Earth. What a gift our Earth has given us to sustain us right now in this. It's giving and replenish. It's something that's replenishing itself. Water, oil, coal. Yes, we don't want to burn this forever because it's got other problems.
Right.
But just the smog itself is not good news. It's okay. We don't want to go mining all this, but it's allowed us to, move to a different place very, very quickly. And when you think this has been a gift from the Earth's interior, how amazing is that? And it gives you a different sense of sort of love for your planet, really.
Right,
And
right.
we can move on from it. That's no problem. But at the end of the day, the Earth has been sustaining us in a beautiful, replenished way.
And the whole notion of it's literally a mental shift in realization, going from things just kind of happening in a sort of patriarchal way to this unfolding quantum spiral of creation, continuously refeeding and resurging itself.
Yes, exactly. And that's why you get diamond rain coming on different planets as well. Diamonds, we're told, is coal that is compacted. Well, again, it's coming up in funnels on this planet, and also it falls down in rain on other planets. So yeah, diamonds are abundant in space. There's even a moon whose entire core is a diamond. I think it's a moon. I'm just checking. All the references are on my website anyway. And if you watch Punk Science TV on my website, punkscience.com, then you can get all that.
Okay, so Punk Science is your first book, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So everyone check out that book. It's excellent. Bright yellow and pink cover. Very, very Manjir. There you go, Punk Science. And then you've got a couple of websites, drmanjir.com and punkscience.com.
Well, if they go to punkscience.com, it'll have everything. So drmanjir.com/fossil is a short link to that blog. Right. Which has got all the references in. So everything is scientifically referenced. You see Punk Science TV, all the episodes as well on punkscience.com, all the blogs, everything, all the references.
You're doing a TV show. Is it a live? Is it a monthly? Is it a weekly?
It's a weekly Facebook Live. So it goes live on my Facebook page, Punk Science Facebook page. Brilliant. And then it'll just come onto my blog as well. So if you go
Big David Icke is getting some press these days, obviously. You used to work at his TV station. You had a show on his TV station?
Yes, that's right. I did a hidden science show, and I had a certain guest on twice. I wonder who that could be.
Actually, hold on. Was I? No, I don't know. But I was definitely on with May Wan Ho, which was...
Yes, that was lovely. That was probably one of the last interviews that she did, which is just amazing.
I mean, I just constantly I'm feeling the May Wan spirit. What a magical being.
Yeah.
So wow, and tell us what else. So you're doing your video production. How else can people get involved with what you're doing?
Well, we're gonna, if they sign up to on my website, they can actually get part of into my system basically, and we're going to be doing the Punk Science Club soon. So, and the Punk Science movie, which is we're definitely editing at the moment and bringing it all together, and so we've got all that to come. And so I'm going to be shortly opening the Punk Science Club. So, but if you sign up, you'll be informed about it when that opens. So there's lots of free courses and things like that that you can access.
Okay, so it's punkscience.com is your preference for people to go to, and then they can find drmanjir.com and all the other stuff from there.
Yes, if you just go to punkscience.com, you'll see my blog. Now it's on the front page, and you can have a look at some of these things.
Perfect. Everyone sign up for Manjir's world. As you can see, she is a fascinating channel of not only a deep intuitive awareness, but the physics and quantum physics of transition, which is really what we're in at the moment, this massive transition period. And as above, so below, if we can understand any aspects at any level, it should give us keys to all the other levels, which include us and our normal everyday life. So keep exploring. Manjir, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Let's do more magic soon. It's been a fantastic Tech Tuesday. My name's Mark Abadi. It's 4 o'clock. My dad keeps telling me I've got a book, Evolve. Go find it, bookevolve.com. It's been a pleasure. Remember the union, the balance, go to where it's uncomfortable and sit in the bliss of your joy. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure as always. Thank you.